Welcome to Coleman Report Live. Bob Coleman. We're talking Main Street and the small business lenders who help it grow. Chris Hearn, good to see you. Back from Idaho. Katie, as always, good to see you. Fountainhead's working the PPP loan program now. Do we have the correct numbers down there, Chris?
You do? Yeah. I mean, they change all the time, but yeah, no, those are accurate as of
almost 300,000 PPP loans, almost $5 billion with a B. How many jobs? How many jobs?
My guess would probably be over 400,000 based on the analysis we've done.
Good for you. Good for you. We have a lot of news. I listened in at the Georgia Quality Lender Circle. I listened in on the headquarters panel. We're going to talk about that a lot. Let's get to the poll questions. Number one, what is the total SBA Program Authority for fiscal year 2021? And I'm sorry, we should have said 7A, but you're right. It's $30 billion for 7A. And right. I believe, Chris, another $7.5 billion for 504.
That's right. Yep. So 37.5 is the total.
Total, right. Plus, we brought this up in the past. The administrator does have the ability to increase either program by 10%, so that $30 billion can move it to $33 billion. We're looking at the mid-year numbers. Remember, we only have 2.5 months left in the fiscal quarter. We're not going to run out of money. I think we're going to be okay. So that's without going through on that. Katie put up these nice charts, and you can see lending activity is about 17 billion as of the first 6 months of this year. So when you add that together, and there'll be a push, I still think we'll be okay. So, but you can see where we are on that, and of course 504 has taken off as well. Very interesting conversation today, Chris and Katie. Okram, Jennifer Blooming really did a nice job of putting this together, and the people down in Georgia did a great job. And they had a number of SBA people talking. And the one I enjoyed the most, let me get his name right so I'm not giving credit where credit is due, Eddie Laferd. Great job, Eddie. And he's saying of the 4 items Okram is looking at, what is the most important? They're looking at all 4 of those items. That's the first hint. Training. Training was number 1. Software they're looking at, it's interesting, no one picked 0. Internal controls is huge, we all understand, and LSP agreements, they're still looking at that for the LSCs. But Chris, they were saying they want to make sure, and they didn't specify who, what, when, or how. They just said, and they acknowledged that the people listening in, that was part of their training. So let's make sure your record keeping is clean, that you're, when you're listening on this show and you're listening in for anything else, that you're making a list, and you can just whip that out and show them. But they're very concerned about that, Chris.
Okay, I'm not surprised. I mean, internal controls, obviously, they need to focus on that. Yeah. And I think software actually is
I was surprised no one said
Than the guests or the audience rated it here. But I think internal controls, software, and training would be the 3 areas I think they're probably most focused on.
And all 4 of these are obviously important, but they said it. Interesting. I hadn't heard this before. So what is the biggest red flag in June of 2021 for Okram? Debt refinance loans, fast closings, selling the loan before fully dispersed, or business acquisition structures? Yeah, what do you think, Chris? What would your vote be?
I'd say it's between the debt refi and business acquisition structures. But
you're wrong. Fast closings is number 1. What lenders are doing and what they're concerned about is they're closing these loans fast. They're dumping all the money into escrow. So they're not, instead of getting all the lien positions, whatever, they're simply putting in escrow, they're closing the loans, and they're selling it. And SBA is not happy with that. And they're saying if you do that, they're not saying you can't do it.
Right.
But they're saying if you do it, it said, basically they didn't go that far. They said, but how can you close a loan when you're supposed to have first lien position of property and you don't do it? You're doing the escrow.
You think people would have learned this by now? right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can have a fast closing so long as you are competent and you dot all your I's and cross all your T's. But if you don't, my God, SBA is going to come down on people and yank their guarantees. I'm shocked that this is their big red flag. Because people are doing
And it ends up with early default. We're going to look at it.
Wow.
So that's the huge red flag. Let's see what else he was saying on that. Interesting. He said, be kind to your underwriter. Don't give them enough time to get it done. Be kind to your closer. And this is what they're talking about. I think they're saying if it's fast closing, goes back to internal controls, and they're saying, why are we doing this? Why are we doing it? Debt refinance. I love the quote. The quote is it's been problematic and it will always be problematic. And he said, you need to clearly understand the underlying debt. There used to be a problem in business acquisition. The great quote on this is, there's interesting chain structures out there, which means they're really looking closely on this. And what they're concerned about, it's very simple. What they're concerned about, what is the purpose of the loan? Is the purpose of the loan going to help the borrower? And if you have a huge loan and you're paying off someone who's flipping it, and he said that, they're going to look at that very, very closely. And that's very problematic. So understand the business acquisitions. They're going to be very, let's take a hotel. That's a classic one, where you're flipping the property after 18 months and you're doubling the value. And sure, you have the appraisals, you have everything to support it, but they're not real happy with those type of transactions.
Makes sense.
Number 4, like we got one more. Which form is Okram's #1 review priority in June 2021? We should have done this in order. The 159 should have been first. That's okay. The 159, the 1050, the 1919, and the 1920. He's specifically focused on one form. And the 159 would have been correct last month, but he said they're shifting their emphasis to the 1050. They want to look at that. Yeah, they want to look at that settlement sheet. They want to see what's happening. That ties in with their
1919.
Go ahead, Chris. Go ahead.
So, yeah. So the focus it's focused on that's already been done. So. Yeah.
So, it was very interesting. Let's see. Let me go with some other notes. John Miller talked about forgiveness, and again, Katie, you've heard this before. They're working on changes in forgiveness, and something should be known in 2 weeks. Have we heard that before? Not to pick on John. I love John. John, I'm not picking on you. I'm just saying we've heard that before.
We have, and I know we're waiting on forgiveness things. We're waiting on, there's supposed to be some more information about servicing soon. I think we're all just kind of waiting on that, but as soon as we hear about it, that's definitely going to be big for the community and a lot of good information that we've been waiting on.
A couple of tidbits, Chris, which affect you. They want borrowers to submit the forgiveness now to work through the system. But he also had a throwaway line, which I thought was interesting. They want to forgive these loans. They don't want to purchase and charge off. I assume that has to do with accounting, whatever, which means if they want to forgive the loans.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, it's less hassle on the small business owner. It's less hassle on SBA, the lenders. Good for everybody. Yeah.
He said they're regarding servicing liquidation, Lance's love. There's they don't expect lenders to spend a lot of time and dollars on PPP. He said there is a significant difference between 7A and PPP, which right now is different than the notices, where the notices, they treat them as a 7A loan. But they made it very clear, our expectations are minimal, which is interesting. He said, however, we could still do deferments. We need some basic servicing action, but we understand these have no collateral, no guaranteed loans, and we don't have an issue with the lenders treating them differently. And that verbal guidance is different than the written guidance.
Right. Yeah. No, it's been my experience with it as well.
Talking about reviews, I love the term, a non-evasive risk-based review. Chris, now you don't have to comment on that.
Non-invasive risk-based review. Isn't that an oxymoron? I don't know.
I'm not. You know what, Chris? I'm gonna save you here.
Right.
It's an oxymoron. No.
Right.
They're saying they're doing as many desktop reviews as possible. Interesting. I love this quote on the 5053-2, which is the SOP having to do with actions and enforcements. They said, quote, do everything you can do to stay out of this. SOP. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely.
He said a number of institutions that have received notices from other regulators and they're not forwarded to SBA. He said we need to have that. We're working with all the regulators on that. They're looking very carefully at these broker fees. Again, document and support, nothing new there. He said the annual, loan servicing invoice from SBA, if you haven't received it, will be arriving soon. He said, pay it quickly. I don't know what that means other than pay it quickly.
We just got ours a couple days ago. So.
This was interesting. This was a big item for him. He said as a junior lender, we all learned that historical cash flow does not repay the loan. It's a nice fact. It doesn't repay the loan. And he made it very clear that cash flow analysis, that's the number one question he's getting from lenders is, and the standard is, okay, I have positive cash flow in 2019. 2020 is a wipeout. What do I do? And he said, yes, we all understand. So don't worry. He didn't say don't worry about it, but he said, the SBA understands historical cash flow doesn't repay loans, and you need to combine them with the projections. Right. And so he's saying, take what you have and give me give SBA a very good set of projections, well thought out, and that can mitigate loss in 2020 in terms of why you think they'll be back to 2019 levels. Never that. Construction
we talked about that particular thing, Bob, a while ago on the show that I thought that would be the next big thing for the SBA community after PPP is how are we going to make loans to borrowers who are so harshly impacted in 2020? And I'm glad to hear that SBA is recognizing that, just because you've got great cash flow in 2019 and maybe you can show it on a projected basis with some really detailed assumptions for 21, but you're going to have to explain 2020 pretty clearly.
Yeah, and explain 2021, but why you think they're going to do that?
Exactly.
He also made the point, Lance has made this point for years, that the SBA, the SOP only establishes bare minimum requirements.
That's right.
Lender has the ability to up that, but so he's saying it's more of a guide than a firm. Moses coming down with tablets engraved in stone. Use those as guides. But he's just talking about prudent lending. Construction, he said they're very tough to forecast cost. He's concerned about cost. He said, you better do your homework on that. He said, I'm not an expert on what lumber costs are today or even what they're going to be in 6 months, but you need to address it. You need to make sure that the costs are prudent. He's saying that lenders are getting sloppy. They're not getting the permits they're supposed to. They're not controlling the controlling the disbursements that they should be. And they want to know, this is the first time I've heard this, is they're paying particular attention to infrastructure. If the loan is predicated on a road being built by the city, they want to know what's going on with that, and you need to address that in your credit memo. So again, nothing new. Oh, interesting. Environmental phase 2s. He said lenders are losing patience and they're closing without the phase 2. And he said, you can't do that. He said, they're willing to roll the dice. He said, don't do it. Do it. Be patient. Get the stuff you need. I know phase 2s take a while, Chris. How long is it taking you these days?
It oftentimes takes about a month from the time you reach a phase 2 until it's complete. But wow, I'm shocked that there are lenders out there who are who are relying on the SBA guarantee, and they're
But you
not
don't
making-
have a guarantee. You come back with
Yeah,
property,
you won't
you
have
have a repair.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
Mhm.
Again,
Again,
these are
you're talking-
things that people know. You know, it's not like this is new guidance coming out.
Yeah, this isn't coming out of left field where we need to have the sons and daughters guarantee all the loans, something. This is all prudent lending stuff that he's saying because he's mentioning because lenders aren't doing it. Some lenders aren't doing this, and they're
It's
focusing on it.
staggers me to hear that some lenders aren't doing some of these basic things. They're just tried and true and they've been around for decades, you know?
Debt refinance, we covered. He said debt refinance is always difficult and it will always be difficult, which means they're going to be looking at those debt refis fully documented, and they're going to be tying that in with the 1050. They're focusing on the 1050.
Well, those are difficult, you know, because again, if people are going to be sloppy with a phase two, not wait for the results to close on a loan, or they're going to do other things that are, maybe they don't have very detailed assumptions in their projections. I mean, you know, a business debt refi is going to be difficult if you got 14 different notes that you're refinancing. You know, my guess is some people are going to be sloppy on that too and not understand what the original use of proceeds were for those notes or get copies of those notes, making sure they understand it. I mean, it's just, you know, these are the things that people have to be really, really careful about.
Katie, and I always talk about in writing is if the writer, Katie, if you don't understand what you're doing, don't guess.
Right.
Because if you don't understand it, the audience certainly is not going to understand it. Right. And that same principle applies here. If you don't understand that underlying note, what's happening with that, you can't. You see, it needs to be fully documented. He wants to make sure the internal controllers are reporting the fraud, and again, focus on communication. And a couple of things. Oh, he said there will be new SOPs coming out. He said you shouldn't be shocked at that. He said probably you want them, which I agree with that. And Diana Seaborn made a great comment. The SBA is a little engine that could, is that they've done one of the greatest economic positive impacts to the U.S. economy with this little agency. And I agree with that, Chris. How do you feel?
I 100% agree with Diana on that. I think this is the PPP and SBA and the lending community. This is the economic story of the decade, maybe more. And we won't know how beneficial it's all been until we can look in the rearview mirror here, maybe another 6 or 12.
Katie, you've been awfully quiet because I haven't been calling on you, so that's my fault, not yours. But what do you think? You're new to this process. What's your impression of SBA and PPP, and from your perch, how do you view it?
Well, it certainly happened all very fast, and I think the administration did what they could to, do what Congress expected of them. And at times, especially early on, they were changing things up very quickly, and they had to make a lot of adjustments. But overall, I think they did a great job. And just kind of reiterating what Chris said, I think we're going to be looking back. We might not know exactly the impact that it's done. We might have an idea right now, but it might take years before we really see how big of an impact this had. But it certainly saved a lot of businesses and a lot of jobs, and that was the intent of the program.
Yeah, I think I might disagree with Chris. He said story of the decade. I may say right now the story of the first 2 decades economically. I mean, this is
never before has a government injected almost $1 trillion into this segment of the economy to small business owners. It's never happened in the history of the economy.
What would have happened if they didn't do it?
I think you would have had economic destabilization. I think this was all about stabilizing the economy, and had we not done what we did, I don't know. I mean,
you don't want to guess. Yeah, I mean, it would have been bad.
Yes, very bad.
Very bad. Katie, real quick, talk about secondary market prices. They're continuing to stay up, and are we at historical highs right now, or are we just high?
I haven't seen that. I haven't really read a report on it yet. We just got this data in, but we are back up high, and we've remained high for a little while now.
Yeah, I think 122 is the high. So
yeah, 122.6. Yeah. And SBA is looking at that, and they understand that once you get over 120, at a 90% guarantee, they understand the lender has absolutely no risk and they're making a profit. So you can book whatever you want and you show a profit with no risk with the guarantee.
Well, some of this, but remember, some of the pricing comes from the fact, Bob, that I think with no SBA fee right now, I think that's
right. Thank you for correcting me or calling me on it because that's very important.
Having a 90%, that's a 20% increase over a 75% guarantee. And not really too many alternative places for some of these purchasers of this paper to go. I think that's why you're seeing the premiums at an all-time high or matching an all-time high.
But SBA is very concerned on how that's why they're going to focus on lenders and on selling to the secondary market. And are you, as Lance likes to say, are you a good SBA citizen? So that's
right.
Very good. So that's a little recap. That's all we did. I was going to do we're doing the monologue on that. Hey, sign up for Lance's webinar tomorrow on past due 31 days. It's Lance has done a good job as always on that. Chris, thank you very much. I know you're on vacation last week. It's good. Now, are you home? Or are you in the office, or where?
I'm still working from home. I go in the office once in a while. I like to make sure everybody knows I'm still around, but it works pretty well. I'm very efficient from home. Yeah.
Katie, are you home or in an office or?
Home office.
There you go, the home office. Well, thank you all very much, and thanks for joining us today for Coleman Report Live and for supporting America's Main Street, one entrepreneur at a time.
Take care, everybody.
Have a great day.